Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. My name's Noah. I'm about to share a story that feels like it belongs in a movie, the kind you hear and think, that could never happen to me. But life has a way of throwing you into the deep end when you least expect it. Just over a year ago, I walked away from my fiancée after catching her in a lie that tore apart everything I believed about us. I thought that was the end, that I'd closed the door for good. But then she reappeared, and the truth she revealed hit harder than the lie I'd uncovered. It made me question our entire relationship, whether I was too trusting, too naive, or just blind to the red flags. This story runs deep, and it's not what you might think. Stick with me through all 5 parts, because by the end, you'll understand why this turned my world upside down. A few years ago, I would have told you I'd found my soulmate. Her name was Elise. We met on a dating app, a random spark that felt like destiny. Our first chat lasted hours, words flowing like we'd known each other forever. We went from constant texting to late-night phone calls, sharing hopes, fears, and everything in between. Soon, we were spending every weekend together, and she slipped into my life like she'd always belonged. There was a warmth with her, a comfort that made me feel like I was right where I was supposed to be. After 2 years, I was certain she was my future. I proposed without a second thought. She said yes, her eyes shining, and it felt like the stars had aligned just for us. I was proud to call her my fiancée, prouder still to dream of the life we'd build. Soon after the engagement, we decided to live together. It made sense. Why keep separate places when we were planning a wedding? She packed up her apartment in Denver and moved into my place in Boulder. Watching her unpack her books, her clothes, her little keepsakes, I felt like we were already creating something solid. Wedding plans started taking shape, and for a while, life was good. Simple. Happy. I didn't know then how fragile happiness can be, how it can slip through your fingers when you're not paying attention. At first, I didn't see the change in Elise. I thought we were in sync on the same path. But slowly, something felt wrong. It wasn't one big moment. It was a slow drip of small things that built up until they were impossible to ignore. She grew distant, like a flame flickering out. The way she used to laugh with me, plan our future, or just be present, it faded. Conversations felt like pulling teeth. I'd ask about her day, and she'd give me short, distracted answers, her eyes somewhere else. We went from partners to something closer to strangers sharing a space. What really started to eat at me was the secrecy. Elise began leaving for quick errands that didn't add up. She'd say she was picking up a coffee or running to the store, but she'd be gone for hours, coming back empty-handed. She'd shrug it off, acting like it was nothing, but the timelines didn't make sense. Then there were the phone calls. I'd catch her whispering into her phone, pacing the patio or tucked into a corner. The moment I walked in, she'd hang up, her face tense, mumbling about a wrong number or just a coworker. It happened too often to be coincidence. Doubt crept in, a quiet voice asking who she was talking to, where she was really going, and why she couldn't just be straight with me. I didn't want to jump to accusations. I've always believed trust means giving someone the benefit of the doubt. So I held back, observing instead of confronting. But the more I watched, the more the pieces didn't fit. And then there was her health. Elise started getting sick constantly. Not just a passing bug, but frequent nausea, headaches, and dizziness. Some nights, she'd barely eat. Others, she'd stay in bed, pale and withdrawn. At first, I thought it might be stress, wedding plans, maybe her work. But it kept happening week after week until she took a leave from her job. That's when I knew it was more than she was letting on. I urged her to see a doctor. She'd brush me off, saying it wasn't serious or that she'd already gone while I was at work. That didn't sit right. Why wouldn't she let me go with her? Why was she so evasive? One night, I pressed harder, asking if she was hiding something. She got defensive, snapping that I was blowing things out of proportion. But the more she dodged, the more I felt like I was being played. Then came a day, everything fell apart. I got off work early, thinking I'd surprise her with takeout from her favorite sushi spot. I walked into the apartment quietly, hoping to see her light up when she saw me. Instead, I heard her voice, sharp and emotional, coming from the living room. She was on the phone, oblivious to my arrival, her words intense and personal. I stood just out of sight, listening, my heart pounding. Then I stepped into the room. Her eyes met mine, and she went silent, like someone had cut the sound. She didn't even finish her sentence, just hung up, her face draining of color. I didn't hesitate. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. She stammered, "My brother," but it was weak. She rarely talked to her brother, and never with that kind of intensity. I held out my hand. "Let me see your phone." She gripped it tightly, shaking her head, insisting I was overreacting. But I didn't back down. Something in my face must have told her I wasn't letting this go. After a long, tense moment, she handed it over, her hand shaking. I didn't need to scroll far. The call log showed the last number, her ex, Julian. The same guy she called controlling, the one she said had hurt her deeply, the one she swore she'd left behind forever. My stomach twisted. I handed the phone back, my voice barely above a whisper. "Pack your things. Get out." She looked stunned, tears spilling as she tried to explain, saying it wasn't what I thought, that it was complicated. But I was done. She'd kept a connection with someone she claimed was her past, someone she'd painted as her nightmare. That was enough. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I grabbed my coat, my keys, and walked out, leaving her standing there. I needed air, distance, anything to escape the weight of her betrayal. I didn't come home that night. The air in Boulder felt too heavy, thick with the sting of Elise's lie. I drove aimlessly, the city lights blurring past, until I ended up at a friend's place. I crashed on his couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying that moment in the living room over and over. Her face when I caught her. The name on her call log, Julian. The way she clutched her phone like it held all her secrets. I didn't sleep much. By morning, I knew I couldn't go back to that apartment. Not yet. When I finally returned, the place was eerily quiet. Elise was gone. Her clothes, her books, her little trinkets, vanished like she'd never been there. A few of her things were still scattered around, a half-empty coffee mug, a scarf draped over a chair, but the bulk of her presence had been erased. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter, scribbled in her familiar handwriting. "I'm sorry. I'll explain if you let me. Please don't hate me." I read it once, crumpled it, and tossed it in the trash. I didn't want her words. I didn't want her excuses. My phone buzzed with messages from her, long paragraphs pleading for a chance to talk, but I couldn't bring myself to read them. I replied once, short and final. "We're done. Don't contact me again." Then I blocked her number. It wasn't just about Julian. It was the betrayal, the secrecy, the way she'd let me plan a future while hiding something so big. I felt like a fool, and that hurt more than anything. But I also felt a strange resolve. I wasn't going to let this define me. I had to move forward, even if it meant rebuilding from scratch. The first thing I did was move out. That apartment was tainted, every corner a reminder of her. Our laughter, our plans, our fights. I found a smaller place across town, a quiet studio with bare walls and no history. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Next, I switched jobs. My old gig wasn't bad, but it was tied to a life I needed to leave behind. I didn't want to face colleagues who'd ask about Elise, who'd seen us together at company events, her hand in mine. I needed a clean break, a new routine to drown out the noise in my head. The new job was in a different industry, tougher, with longer hours. But I welcomed it. The grind kept me focused, gave me something to pour myself into. It was the only thing that kept me from spiraling. For months, I worked on erasing her from my life. I stopped checking her social media, stopped wondering where she was or who she was with. I threw myself into the new job, into friendships, into anything that felt like progress. I even started running, something I'd never done before. The burn in my lungs, the rhythm of my steps. It was a way to outrun the anger, the questions, the what-ifs. Slowly, I convinced myself I was moving on. I told myself that maybe this was for the best, that I'd dodged a bullet before we got married, before we built a life on a foundation I didn't even understand. Life started to feel manageable again. I wasn't happy, not really, but I was functional. I could laugh at a joke, enjoy a beer with friends, focus on a project without my mind drifting to her. I thought I'd left Elise behind, that the chapter was closed. But life, as I'd learned, doesn't let you off that easily. It was a Saturday about 14 months after I'd walked out that night. I was home, winding down after a long week, scrolling through a streaming service for something mindless to watch. A knock at the door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone, and my new place wasn't exactly on anyone's regular route. I opened the door, and there she was, Elise. My heart stopped. She looked different, thinner, her hair shorter, her eyes carrying a weight I didn't recognize. But it was her. I stood there, frozen, my mind racing with a mix of confusion and anger. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She didn't flinch. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly. "Can I come in?" I hesitated. Every instinct told me to shut the door, to keep her out of my life. But something in her expression, resignation, maybe, or desperation, made me pause. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her in. We walked to the living room, the silence between us heavy, awkward. I sat on the couch. She took a chair across from me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The familiarity of her presence clashed with the strangeness of the moment. We'd been so close once, and now we were strangers. "I know you don't want me here," she started, her voice steady but low. "I don't like how things ended. I owe you the truth." I didn't say anything. I just watched her, my guard up, ready to dismiss whatever she was about to say. I'd spent months convincing myself she was a liar, that nothing she said could be trusted. But then she looked at me, her eyes locking onto mine, and said something that hit like a freight train. "I was pregnant when we broke up. The baby wasn't yours." The room seemed to tilt. My mind scrambled to process her words, to make sure I'd heard her right. Pregnant? Not mine? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She didn't wait for me to respond. She kept going, her voice steady but laced with something raw. She said she found out she was pregnant 3 months before I caught her on the phone. The father, she admitted, was Julian, her ex. She said it happened during a break we'd taken, one I hadn't even realized was a break. My memory flashed back. Before I proposed, we'd had a brutal fight about what I can barely remember now. Money, maybe, or where we'd live after the wedding. We didn't speak for nearly a week, and I spent those days wondering if we were done. But we reconciled, apologized, and I thought we were stronger for it. A month later, I proposed. It never crossed my mind to ask if she'd been with someone else during that time. Why would it? I loved her. I thought she loved me. But apparently, in that window, when I was agonizing over how to fix us, she'd turned to Julian, the man she'd called her worst mistake, the one she said she'd never go back to. I found my voice barely. "So, you slept with him during that fight, and you didn't tell me when we got back together?" She went quiet, then nodded, her eyes dropping to the floor. She said the phone call I'd walked in on, the one that ended everything, was her arguing with Julian. He'd been pressuring her to end the pregnancy, she said, but she didn't want to. By then, she was too far along to make that choice. Suddenly, the pieces started clicking into place. The sickness she'd brushed off as stress, the secretive errands, the way she avoided hospitals, the distance between us. It wasn't just a lie. It was a web of deception, and I'd been caught in it without a clue. Elise's words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. I sat there, staring at her, my mind clawing through the fog of her confession. Pregnant. Not mine. Julian. The pieces were falling into place, but they didn't make the picture any clearer. They just made it uglier. The nausea, the secrecy, the way she'd pulled away from me. It all made sense now, but that didn't make it hurt less. If anything, it cut deeper, knowing how long she'd carried this without a word. I wanted to ask a million questions, but my throat felt tight, like the air had been sucked out of the room. Finally, I managed, "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked down at her hands, twisting them together, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know how. I was scared, Noah. I didn't want to lose you." She paused, her eyes flicking up to meet mine, then dropping again. "I thought if I could just handle it, figure out on my own, maybe I wouldn't have to hurt you." Her words sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced them 100 times, but they landed hollow. Handle it? Figure it out? She'd been planning a wedding with me, sharing my bed, all while carrying another man's child. The betrayal wasn't just in what she did. It was in how long she let me believe we were building something real. I leaned back, running a hand through my hair, trying to keep my voice steady. So what? You were just going to keep this up? Let me marry you, raise a kid that wasn't mine, and hope I never found out. She flinched like the words were a physical blow. No, she said quickly. I didn't have a plan. I was panicking. Every day, I told myself I'd tell you, but then I'd see you, and you were so good, so happy. I couldn't bring myself to break that. Her excuse only fueled the anger simmering in my chest. You didn't think I deserved the truth? You didn't think I deserved a choice? My voice was rising now, and I didn't care. You let me propose, Elise. You moved in. You let me think we were starting a life together. And the whole time, you were lying to my face. She started to cry, quiet sobs shaking her shoulders, but I didn't soften. I couldn't. The hurt was too raw, the betrayal too fresh, even after all this time. She wiped her eyes, taking a shaky breath. I know I messed up. I know I should have told you the second I found out. But I was ashamed. He was a mistake. A moment of weakness when I thought we were over. I didn't think it would turn into this. She gestured vaguely, like she was pointing at the mess of her life. When I realized I was pregnant, I was already back with you. I thought I could make it work, that I could fix it without you ever knowing. I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. Fix it? You don't fix something like that by lying, Elise. You don't fix it by sneaking around, talking to him behind my back. My mind flashed to that phone call, the one that ended us. What was that argument with Julian about? The one I walked in on? She hesitated, like she was weighing how much to say. He knew about the pregnancy, she admitted. He'd been calling me, pressuring me to get rid of it. Said he didn't want to be tied to me, that it was my problem. I was trying to stand my ground, but he wouldn't let up. That day, I was telling him to leave me alone. I stared at her, tried to piece it together. So, all those times you were sick, all those errands, the dodging doctors, that was you dealing with this? With him. She nodded, her face crumpling. I didn't want you to know. I thought I could handle it until I figured out what to do. But it just kept getting bigger, and I kept digging myself deeper. Her voice broke. I didn't want to hurt you, Noah. I loved you. Loved. Past tense. That word hit like a punch. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. You didn't love me, I said quietly. You don't do this to someone you love. She didn't respond, just sat there, tears streaming down her face. The silence stretched, heavy and unbearable. I didn't know what to feel, anger, sadness, or just numbness. Maybe all of it. But one question burned brighter than the rest. What happened to the baby? I asked, my voice barely audible. Elise's breath hitched, and she looked away, like she couldn't face me. I had her, she said softly. A girl. She's a year old now. The words landed like a stone in my chest. A child. A living, breathing piece of this betrayal, out there in the world. I tried to picture it. Elise as a mother, raising a daughter who wasn't mine, a daughter tied to Julian, the man she'd sworn she despised. It was too much to process. Where is she? I asked, not sure why it mattered. With my mom in Denver, she said. I needed help, and Julian's not in the picture. He didn't want anything to do with her. Her voice was bitter now, edged with resentment. I'm doing it alone. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, but the bigger part was still reeling, still angry. She'd made her choices, and they'd blown up both our lives. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice hard. Why show up after all this time? She looked at me, her eyes raw, unguarded, because I couldn't carry it anymore. The guilt, the lies, was eating me alive. I needed you to know the truth, even if you hate me for it. I needed to say it out loud. She stood, smoothing her jeans, like she was preparing to leave. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness or to get you back. I had to tell you. She moved toward the door, and I didn't stop her. My mind was a storm, questions and emotions crashing into each other. As she reached for the handle, she turned back, her voice soft but clear. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I am. And then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. I sat there, staring at the empty chair, the weight of her words settling into my bones. Elise's confession left me hollow, like someone had carved out a piece of me and left the edges raw. I sat in my studio apartment, the silence louder than ever, her words looping in my head. Pregnant. A daughter. Julian. The truth wasn't just a bombshell. It was a wrecking ball, smashing through the walls I'd built to move on. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind kept replaying our life together, searching for clues I'd missed, moments where I should have seen through her. The nausea she'd brushed off, the secretive calls, the way she'd grown distant. It all made sense now, but that clarity didn't bring peace. It brought a gnawing ache, a mix of anger, betrayal, and something I couldn't name. Grief, maybe, for the future I'd lost, for the man I was before I knew the truth. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face the world, not with my head this scrambled. I paced the apartment, trying to make sense of it all. Why did it still hurt so much? I'd walked away over a year ago, convinced I was done with her. I'd moved, changed jobs, rebuilt my life. But Elise's reappearance had ripped open wounds I thought were healed, exposing how fragile my moving on really was. I kept circling back to one question. How could I have been so blind? I'd loved her, trusted her, planned a life with her, and all the while, she was hiding something this massive. Was I too trusting, or was she just that good at lying? I tried to distract myself, cleaned the kitchen, went for a run, blasted music, but nothing worked. My thoughts kept drifting to her daughter, a 1-year-old girl, living with Elise's mom in Denver. I didn't know why it mattered, but I couldn't stop picturing her. Did she look like Elise? Like Julian? Was she happy? The thought of Elise as a mother felt surreal, like a piece of a puzzle that didn't fit. She'd always talked about wanting kids someday, but not like this, not in secret, not with someone else. And Julian, the man she'd painted as a monster, was out of the picture. That part didn't surprise me, but left me wondering, what was Elise's life like now? Was she struggling? Was she okay? I hated that I cared, but I did. By afternoon, I was restless, my emotions a tangled mess. I needed to talk to someone to get this out before it consumed me. I called my best friend, Sam, who'd been there through the breakup, who'd let me crash on his couch that first night. We met at a coffee shop near my place, and I spilled everything. Elise showing up, the pregnancy, the baby, Julian, all of it. Sam listened, his face shifting from shock to anger to something softer, like pity. When I finished, he leaned back, exhaling. Man, that's heavy. What are you going to do? I didn't have an answer. I don't know, I admit it. I keep thinking I should feel relieved, like I dodged a bullet. I could have married her, raised a kid that wasn't mine, lived a lie. But instead, I just feel lost. Sam nodded, like he got it. You're allowed to feel that, he said. She didn't just lie. She took away your ability to choose. That's not small. His words hit home. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the theft of my agency, the way she'd made decisions about my life without me knowing. Sam asked if I was going to reach out to her, and I shook my head. She said her piece. I don't know her anything. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure. Part of me wanted to know more, not to forgive her, but to understand. How long would she have kept this up if I hadn't caught her? Would she have told me before the wedding? Or would I have found out years later, maybe through a paternity test or a slip of the tongue? The what-ifs were torture, each one a fresh stab of doubt. Over the next few days, I tried to get back to normal. I went to work, hit the gym, hung out with friends. But Elise's confession clung to me like a shadow. I started noticing things I hadn't before, couples with strollers, kids laughing in the park. It stirred something in me, a mix of longing and resentment. I'd wanted that life with her, the family, the future. Now, that dream felt tainted, like a promise someone else had stolen. I kept wondering what my life would have been like if I'd never caught her on that call. Would I be a father now, clueless but happy? Would I still be with her, building a life on a foundation of lies? The thought made my skin crawl, but it also made me question everything. Had I been too quick to walk away? Should I have stayed, asked more questions, tried to understand? One night, unable to sleep, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I looked her up online. I unblocked her number, hesitated, then checked her social media. Her profiles were mostly private now, but I found a public photo from a few months back, a candid shot of her holding a baby girl, both of them smiling in a park. The caption was simple: "My everything." The girl had Elise's eyes, her soft curls. My chest tightened. This was real. This was the child she'd hidden from me, the truth she'd carried while we were together. I closed the app, my heart racing, and tossed my phone across the room. I didn't want to feel this, whatever this was. Pity, anger, curiosity, it was too much. The next morning, I woke up with a new question burning in my mind. Why had Elise come back now? She'd said it was guilt, that she couldn't carry the lie anymore. But was that all? Was there something else? Something she wasn't saying? The Elise I knew didn't do things without a reason. I started to wonder if there was more to her story, something that might explain why she'd shown up after all this time. Was she struggling, needing help? Was there trouble with Julian? Or was it really just closure, a selfish need to unburden herself at my expense? The uncertainty gnawed at me, pulling me back into a past I thought I'd left behind. I knew I had a choice. Let this go, keep moving forward, or dig deeper, risk opening old wounds for answers I might not want. The smart thing would be to walk away, to let Elise and her daughter fade into the background of my life. But something, curiosity, maybe, or a need for closure, wouldn't let me. Not yet. The days after seeing Elise's photo with her daughter felt like walking through fog. I was functioning, going to work, eating, sleeping, but my mind was elsewhere, caught in a loop of questions and doubts. Why had she come back? Was it really just guilt, or was there something more? The image of her daughter, those familiar eyes, haunted me. I told myself to let it go, to keep moving forward like I'd been doing for over a year. But the truth Elise had dropped in my lap wasn't something I could just shove into a box and forget. It was alive, messy, and it demanded something from me, even if I didn't know what. I wrestled with the idea of reaching out to her. Part of me wanted answers, details she hadn't shared, reasons she'd kept this from me for so long. Another part screamed to leave it alone, to protect the fragile peace I'd built. Sam's words from the coffee shop echoed in my head. She took away your ability to choose. That was the core of it, wasn't it? Elise had made decisions that shaped my life without giving me a say. Maybe contacting her wasn't about forgiving her. It was about taking back some of that control, about understanding the full scope of what I'd lost. After a week of indecision, I caved. I unblocked her number and sent a text, short and to the point. We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow, 3 p.m., the place on Pearl Street. Let me know if you can make it. I hit send before I could overthink it, my heart pounding. For hours, there was no reply, and I started to wonder if she'd changed her number or if she'd decided I wasn't worth the effort. Then, just as I was about to give up, my phone buzzed. I'll be there. No explanation, no apology, just agreement. It was enough. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop early, claiming a corner table with a view of the door. My stomach churned as I sipped my coffee, watching people come and go. When Elise walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked tired, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her jacket slightly too big for her frame. But her eyes were sharp, scanning the room until they landed on me. She gave a small nod and made her way over, sitting across from me without a word. The air between us was charged, heavy with everything unsaid. Thanks for coming, I started, my voice steadier than I felt. I've been thinking about what you told me. I need to understand more. She nodded, her hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. Ask me anything, she said, her voice soft but resolute. I owe you that. I didn't hold back. How long were you planning to keep this from me? If I hadn't caught you on that call, would you have told me before the wedding? After? Ever? She flinched, but didn't look away. I don't know, she admitted. I want to tell you every day, but I was terrified of losing you. I kept thinking I'd find the right moment, but it never came. By the time you caught me, I was drowning in it. The pregnancy, Julian, the lies. I didn't know how to climb out. Her honesty, raw as it was, didn't soothe the ache. You let me propose, I said, my voice tightening. You let me plan a life with you, knowing you were carrying his kid. How do you justify that? She swallowed hard, tears welling but not falling. I can't justify it, she said. I was selfish. I loved you, Noah, and I wanted the life we were building. I thought if I could just hold on, maybe it would all work out. It was wrong, and I hate myself for it. I leaned back, processing her words. What's your life like now? I asked, not sure why I needed to know. You said Julian's gone. You're raising her alone. She nodded, her expression softening. Her name's Ava, she said, a faint smile breaking through. She's amazing. Hard, but amazing. I'm working part-time, living with my mom for now. Julian signed away his rights before she was born. He didn't want the responsibility, and honestly, I'm glad he's out of our lives. Hearing her daughter's name, Ava, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I pictured the girl from the photo, and something twisted in my chest. Do you think about me? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. About what you did to us? Elise's eyes met mine, unflinching. Every day, she said. I think about the life we could have had, the man I lost because I couldn't be honest. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know I'm trying to be better, for Ava, for myself. The conversation stretched on, and she answered every question I threw at her. She told me about the pregnancy, how she'd hidden it with baggy clothes and excuses. She talked about the fear of Julian's pressure, the guilt of lying to me, the relief and terror of becoming a mother. By the time we finished, I felt drained but lighter, like I'd reclaimed a piece of the truth she'd stolen. I didn't forgive her. I wasn't sure I ever could, but I understood her choices, flawed and human as they were. As we stood to leave, I asked one last thing. Why now, Elise? What made you come back? She hesitated, then said, Ava's first birthday was last month. I looked at her and realized I didn't want her to grow up with a mother who carries secrets. I needed to face what I did to you and to myself. Telling you was the first step. She paused, then added, I hope you find peace, Noah. You deserve it. We parted ways, no promises, no plans to meet again. Driving home, I felt a strange mix of closure and unrest. The truth hadn't fixed everything. It hadn't erased the pain or answered every question, but it had given me something. Perspective. I'd loved Elise, but that love had blinded me, made me ignore the cracks in our foundation. Walking away when I did had saved me from a bigger heartbreak, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. I could have been a father to Ava, living a lie, or found out years later, shattered by the truth. Instead, I'd escaped before the vows, before the diapers, before the life I wasn't meant to live. Now, sitting in my apartment, I think about what this all means. Knowledge isn't always power. It's messy, jagged, and sometimes it leaves you with more questions than answers. I wonder if I was right to walk away that night, or if I should have stayed, listened, tried to understand. I wonder if I'll ever trust someone that fully again, or if this betrayal will always linger, a shadow on every new connection. Most of all, I wonder about Ava, a child who'll never know me, but who's tied to this story in ways I can't untangle. Will Elise tell her about me one day? Will she grow up knowing her mother's mistakes? Or will I just be a footnote in their lives? So, I turn to you, the one reading this. What do you think? Was I right to cut Elise out when I did, to protect myself from her lies? Or should I have stayed, dug deeper, handled it differently? Even now, with the truth laid bare, I'm not sure. Maybe I never will be. But one thing I know, this story, as painful as it is, has shaped me. It's made me question love, trust, and the stories we tell ourselves to keep going. And maybe, just maybe, it's taught me that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do.